Hello, I'm Philip Stoughton. I'm at Apex 2025. I'm on the Co-Young booth and I'm joined by Sanjay Huprikar from IPC. Sanjay, always a pleasure to chat to you.
Good morning. Likewise. Thank you.
You have this beautiful view of what's happening all around the world, and a lot of stuff's happening. It's a fast-moving world with respect to trade at the moment,
Right.
and that's having an impact on our industry.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's start with India.
Yeah.
So India has become, I think, the poster child for the goal of a country that's trying to do end-to-end. You've seen now the major investments that are going on in semiconductors.
Yeah.
We know about the growth in the EMS industry.
Yeah.
PCB fab is beginning to come alive there.
Yeah.
So I think that might be the model for countries to look at. If there's any country that's going to try to pull off the end-to-end, it's going to be them.
Yeah, I think it's exciting there, particularly because, potentially 1 billion consumers.
Right.
You look at what happened in the last 25 years, 30 years in China. They lifted like 500 million people out of poverty.
Exactly.
Those people become consumers of electronic products.
Now let's go to the opposite end of the spectrum. And you just spoke to Allison.
Yeah.
So we know what's going on in Europe. PCB companies dwindling.
Yeah.
I think the EMS, even though 2024 was a difficult year for...
I think they're robust.
But they're robust, right?
Yeah.
They passed the CHIPS Act similar to the US, right? We'll see exactly how the execution and rollout of that is going to be. Defense and competitiveness are the two themes from the EU.
Yeah.
And I think there's an opportunity for us to play a role in that as well.
Yeah.
The UK just announced their defense spending is going up.
It's going up.
I think the Europeans are going to follow suit.
Yeah, they are. With the debt ceiling's been raised, so they have the opportunity.
But what's still lacking is a cohesive policy around how electronics manufacturing fits in the industrial base. And I think until that is achieved, we're going to continue to have these little bumpy roads. And we just, as Allison probably mentioned, we just released a paper on that. And I think we're going to use that as probably our next big advocacy campaign to get people engaged in this process.
Yeah.
We're beginning to see cracks in a good way. People are beginning to understand the value of what the rest of the ecosystem brings beyond just the chip.
Yeah.
And there's another opportunity for us to campaign on that.
Yeah. And I think, Alison mentioned that report. I think the fact that that's a data-rich report is supported by really strong data is hugely valuable to everybody in the market. It's been really nice to see some European EMSs here. It was lovely to see Zava get the recognition he deserves and get the President's Award. Yeah. You have 2 Europeans on the board.
Well, let's talk about those accomplishments. I mean, that's a great segue. You mentioned Zava winning a President's Award. Thomas Mark Scheffel from ASMPT also won a President's Award. We added 2 new Europeans to the IPC Board of Directors, Marcus from Zollner and Gunther Lauber from ASMPT. For the 3rd year in a row, Bosch's Lothar Henneken won Best Paper.
Okay.
So we're seeing the Europeans playing a very strong role in IPC. So we're really living that dream of, hey, we want to be a global association, and we want everybody around the planet who's engaged in electronics to be engaged with IPC, and it's working out.
Yeah, and you're building the team there in Europe. I'm definitely having a sense that there is much more traction in Europe.
Absolutely.
They love what you're doing in terms of the EMS leadership events. I think the industry's been crying out for that, and it needs an organization like IPC to be of the independent focus and the pivot there, because you're able to give them the environment, but you're not forcing an agenda on them.
Yeah, so if we look back a little bit at the history, we were 1 or 2 people at most dabbling in Europe. David Bergman was really the guy who created it for us, right? Yeah. But he was spread thin. He was trying to do everything around the world. He was our Mr. International guy at the time. We have brought in the last 4 years, we've grown the team from 2 people to 10 people. Yep. You've been a big part of what we've done there, because you've seen it. The visibility at the trade shows, getting the IPC brand out. Philippe deserves a lot of credit.
Absolutely.
As quirky as those competitions are, it draws an audience. It shines the spotlight on the things we want to shine the spotlight on. Workforce, standards.
But what I love about that is, when I look just specifically at that little activity in electronica, you were reaching engineers.
Absolutely.
You were reaching executives.
Exactly.
We had leadership in the studio talking to people.
Yeah.
You were getting every layer of the industry, which I think is essential.
And that's been our strategy. Our strategy is, while we're gaining visibility, building awareness of who we are. Simultaneously, we've been building those relationships with the executives and the influencers. And now you see when Allison wants to do a campaign, whereas before we were dialing for donuts, people are coming to us saying, tell us how we can help.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been a great turnaround.
Yeah.
Team deserves a lot of credit for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, when you look at the support that Allison's had from people like Zava and Thomas Michaels and people like that, doing the work she's doing,
absolutely,
I think that's hugely valuable, and it shows that what you're doing is the right thing, because the industry only follows if it's the right thing. Europeans are pretty fussy about where they'll hitch their wagons, and they've definitely hitched them to the IPC, so I think that's really important.
Let me share with you just a little bit of the work we're doing in the UK as well, and we never want to forget the UK. They're
still Europe.
They are and they aren't. Right?
Well, they're Europe. They're just not. They're
not EU. Exactly. From an IPC perspective, the UK represents the second most certifications we do around the world after the US. Okay. And a big part of that is because that manufacturing is very aerospace, defense, military focused, right? And so it plays into the strengths of Class 3 products, the need for standards, the need for training. Now the story and the narration fits very nicely together. I was just in the UK last week.
You were speaking at one of those.
I participated in the Make UK National Manufacturers Conference, and I had a very simple message for them. I was invited to talk about what we are doing for workforce. But my message to them was a very 30,000-foot view message, which is every region right now is struggling with how to incorporate electronics into an industrial policy. And until they do that, and not just in a silo, but how does regulatory, how does taxation, how do all those landscapes fit into the overall industrial policy? There's never going to be a cohesive strategy on workforce talent and pipeline development. And so that was my message to them is, what can IPC do to help you create a cohesive policy so that we can fit workforce into this in a very clean way? And I think they maybe have been a little bit shocked that an American came out and said that. On the other hand, I thought many people told me afterwards they thought it was a refreshing comment that hey, here's somebody pushing us to do a cohesive strategy. And I think we'll see some gains from there. So they welcomed me, and I was very pleased to be there. And I think we're accomplishing a lot on behalf of the industry there.
Yeah, and I think what you're doing globally, you know, wherever you are, it just fits so well with what the industry is demanding. I was counting the interviews we did last evening, and in the first 2 days we did 46 interviews, and most of those were with EMS leadership. So mostly we're talking to EMS guys. They're concerned about politics and economics and the variability there, an area that IPC is active in. They're concerned about talent development and how they should deal with that. Another area you're involved in. They're also very AI curious. They're trying to figure out where that's going. They're thinking about where are the standards going to be in this industry? Where are the safeguards and safety rails going to be? We don't know who the ideal guide through that world is. More work that you're doing.
Well, more work, and then it fits into this notion that we're the Global Electronics Association, because as you just rightfully pointed out, so many of the challenges and concerns are universal across the board. What's the responsible AI policy? How are we addressing workforce? What are tariffs going to do to our trade? These are not isolated issues. These are issues everybody's facing. So what we can do to help create dialogue around solving those problems, that's our role. As a convener, that's our role.
And just in summary, you've got a really exciting agenda. You'd already decided kind of before the latest news that, you know, aerospace and defense was a key sector for you in Europe. You've got a really nice schedule of events coming up. We
do. We are so on the first half of the year, we're going to be doing an aerospace themed IPC day in conjunction with Airbus in Toulouse in June, early June. We're discussing, based on the paper that we just released to the European Commission, should we be thinking about some sort of bringing the government, the academics, the private companies together to talk more about this policy for creating an electronics manufacturing strategy in the industrial-based policy. Later in the year, we're working with the European Space Agency on some of their conferences. So this year very much feels like an aerospace security kind of theme.
And you've got another EMS leadership summit in Europe. I think
we'll have one. We'll have an EMS leadership summit in the UK in June. Okay. We'll have an EMS leadership summit for continental Europe in September in Paris.
Yeah.
And then that'll dovetail right into Productronica.
Yeah.
So a very active and busy year coming up.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? And you're doing a great job there. And what I actually love is it's not just the work you're doing there. It doesn't feel like it's isolated. It feels like all these parts are connected, and they have so much value to have when it comes up to IPC level, and you're sharing vision.
Yeah,
so I think that's
we're about interconnection, so it seems to be a good theme for us.
Absolutely.
Great.
Well, stay connected.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for talking to me, and we'll chat soon.
Great seeing you this week. Thank you.